Hey everyone, James Labrie from Dream Theater, and you're listening to or watching the podcast Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian. Enjoy this. These guys are extremely informative. I love their dialogue. I love their interpretation of the songs, who and what we are, what we were going after. They're very accurate in their interpretations and descriptions, and I just think this is a great show, and these guys are doing a stand-up stellar job. So once again, enjoy Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Talking into Infinity, a Dream Theater podcast. I am your host, John. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the cmsnetwork.com. We are live at those four locations every other Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with the exception of next week. On Thursday, December 23rd at 7:30, we are going to be having our big fan hangout, so come join us in the chat. We're basically just going to be bullshitting music all night, so come hang out with us next Thursday, December 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you would like to catch video replays of the show, just go to our YouTube channel or check out Heavy Metal Television. That's our main hub. And if you would like to catch the audio version of the show, just Google Talking into an Infinity podcast. Click any of the links. We're pretty much anywhere you find your podcast. So real quick, interesting show note for tonight. As everyone knows, we are doing our huge double episode celebrating the grandeur that is Images and Words. I'll have my special guest on here in just a second, but Brian will not be with us tonight. He actually had a family emergency come up, so he is currently driving to St. Louis. He himself is fine, but definitely sending out best wishes to his family. Obviously, you know, Christmas is coming up next week, so it's a terrible time for something to go down. So love you, man. I know you're listening in the car, so hope everything is going well. So in Brian's place, I am bringing back an awesome co-host of mine that was on a few shows ago. Those of you who pay attention to past episodes may remember him from the Score Deep Dive that we did. I would like to introduce or reintroduce Mr. Matt Wardlaw from Ultimate Classic Rock. What is going on, man?
John Drake, wonderful to see you as always, man. Great to be back. And, you know, I'll just say it so you don't get a chance to. They may remember me from lighting some of their favorite Dream Theater shows. I was the lighting person, providing the light.
The five head. That's why you got the hat on.
Little preview for the Talking into Infinity viewers here. So there you go. That's just for you.
There you go. You got the Brian Posehn going on.
I do. Yeah.
Very much.
But it's great to be here. Thank you, man.
No, I appreciate you coming in on short notice, man. That's very, very cool of you. So let's bring on the special guest, man. I know you are a fan of his band. He is the bass player for Galactic Cowboys, and he has his own podcasts, a couple of them, Art That Rocks with Monty Colvin, and he does the Rockcast, Monty's Rockcast. And he is a phenomenal rock and roll artist. We will get to his paintings as well. Art That Rocks, again, is his podcast and the Rockcast. So without further ado, Mr. Monty Colvin of the Galactic Cowboys. What is up, man?
What is up?
It is good to see you. Yeah, thank you.
Good to see you.
So jumping right into this, you know, we told everybody, we've actually been, you know, promoting you for a bit. And, you know, you are here because the Galactic Cowboys toured with Dream Theater started in like May of 93, I believe.
Yeah.
And it was on the second North American leg of the Images and Words tour. So you guys were there as the band was kind of blowing up, you know, right at the outset of their career. So how did you first hear about Dream Theater? Was it actually through getting booked to tour with them?
You know, I think it was actually we were on tour in I think 91, and with King's X, we were opening for King's X. And Mike Portnoy came out to one of the shows. And afterwards, he came up to me and introduced himself. And I think that's the first time I'd ever heard of him. And so from then, I started kind of following them and seeing them. And I think I saw the video for Pull Me Under on Headbangers Ball or something. And so I thought, I'm going to go out and see these guys. And they were actually playing a club in Houston. And I went out, and once again, Mike came over and said, "Hey, I dig your band," and we talked a little bit. And from there, when we came out with our second album, Space in Your Face, we had switched management, and our new manager, Andy Gould, just one day goes, "So who would you like to tour with?" And I, for some reason, I just went, "Well, how about Dream Theater?" And he goes, "Yeah, let me check into that." And next thing I know, he's like, "Yeah, you're going out with Dream Theater." And so that was kind of the way it happened. It was just kind of crazy, real quick. And next thing you know, we were out there on the road with them. And the first sound check we ever did, they all looked around and they came up to us and were like, "Man, you guys' vocals are really good. We dig the harmonies." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks," And after that, they were like, "Hey, would you guys come out on stage and do the background vocals on Take the Time?" And we're like, "Heck yeah, let's do it." So, it kind of formed a kind of immediate friendship with them. And, we just had a great tour with them.
I like that you kind of like, it's impressive to me that you put yourself out there, having seen Dream Theater live, that you put yourself out there as kind of like what could be the sacrificial lamb as the opening act. Like, were you intimidated at all at the prospect of sharing the stage with these guys?
I think back on that now and I go, what was I thinking? And had it been now, I would have totally been intimidated. But back then it was just like, hey, that sounds fun. And I'll tell you something else is the first band we ever toured with was Overkill.
Oh, shit.
And I thought the same thing then, like, well, that'll be all right, and no, their fans did not take to us. We had too many harmony vocals and things like that, too many melodies, I guess. And it just wasn't their thing. And so that was a rough tour. And so I don't know, after that, it was like, I just thought, well, yeah, Dream Theater, sure, but looking back, like, man, I don't know, I think I would have been really intimidated now because of, they're just like this virtuoso band that, people are in awe of, including me. But then it was just like, yeah, they're a cool band. Let's go out. And so we did. And back then I didn't even think anything about it. I just went out every night and we just, we were who we were. We rocked. We were kind of metal, but we had the Beatles vocals going on. And we just went out every night and just rocked, and I don't know, it seemed like their fans really kind of dug us. I mean, a lot of them, were looking at our hands, and stuff like that. And we're just like, come on, let's jam, but I don't know. It seemed to work. And we picked up a lot of fans from that tour. And Mike, Portnoy would come on stage every night with us. And we did this song called Pump Up the Spacesuit, which was just, kind of this fun song, and yep. I'm sure it wasn't anything their fans were that into at the time, but he would come out and just jam and run around the stage with us. And I don't know, maybe that helped gain us some acceptance with them, but it was really a great tour. So
we actually have some of your fans in here. So
nice.
Matt Dunlap says Monty always brings the metal. Of course,
nice.
That, goes without saying. Engage the Broken says Monty is an amazing bassist and songwriter, such a great dude. And Matt Dunlap again, he says he actually got to see the show in '93 in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, cool.
So, there you go.
Yeah.
So I want to know from Matt, would that have been Mississippi Nights? So maybe he can let us know in the comments if that was Mississippi Nights, because I've heard so many things about that venue.
I think it was a theater.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. I know Matt. Matt's a great guy. Matt can answer if he wants. I believe we played a theater. Most of the shows on that whole tour were theaters. And,
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, they were pretty big places because they were just starting to kind of explode. And well, it was Pull Me Under was kind of a hit for them when we were on tour with them. So yeah, they went from clubs to bigger theaters at that point. And so we hit it at a really nice time.
So, and now if I remember the timing of this right, they had graduated from like a van to they'd gone to the tour bus, right? So you guys were in buses.
Yeah.
So I had heard that there's a crazy story about a bus driver, a cocky bus driver, that got their bus stuck under a bridge.
Yes, I remember that. It was it wasn't the bus. It was one of the trucks with all the equipment.
Okay.
Oh man.
And he thought he could make it in this bridge, and it just wedged. And the poor road crews had to unload every bit of that truck and then put it into another truck or something like that, and before they could get the thing unwedged. But yeah, I've forgotten that. In fact, I couldn't even remember whether it was that tour or another one. But yeah, I remember that happening.
The rumor was that guy was like really new. It might have even been like his first trip, and apparently he was like bragging about like, watch how fast I'm going to get this stuff to the next venue or something.
Yeah,
and
that sounds about right.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you addressed like the fan thing, because I think, you know, as Matt said, you know, at the sacrificial lamb thing, but I think at that time, because people were still new to Dream Theater, you know, there's definitely, you know, more of an open-minded acceptance for opening acts, which I don't think is quite there these days. But
yeah.
So, I mean, talk a little bit about that, you know, the acceptance that you got from this incredible progressive crowd. I mean, because you guys are very different, I guess, in a way from them. It's like you do have those monster Beatles type choruses, but your riffs are pretty heavy and sludgy, and, you know, you got the time changes and everything, but it's definitely a very, you know, kind of oil and water type thing if you're really kind of looking at Dream Theater style.
Yeah, and you know, back then it didn't matter really who we played with. We were always going to be different from whoever we were playing with, because we just, you know, the record company didn't usually know what to do with us, you know, because it was just kind of a weird, different thing. I think maybe we were a little, I hate to say this, but sounds maybe arrogant, but I think we were a little ahead of our time, maybe, because a lot of this kind of stuff now is called metalcore, and you know, that kind of thing, where you got real melodic choruses, but you know, the rest of the song's really heavy. Well, we were doing that in '91, you know, and a lot of people just didn't know how to take us. And so we, you know, sometimes we'd go over great, and sometimes, you know, crowds didn't know what to do with us, you know. But yeah, the Dream Theater crowds are really cool. I think they just saw that, you know, we were what we were, and we were having a good time. And I actually watched, not too long ago, I watched one of those shows from back then on that tour. It was the San Francisco show. It was on YouTube, and where we opened. And it was fun to watch. I mean, I think we were at, you know, our peak maybe, is, you know, being on stage and just killing it, you know. And because I was like, man, we were really good on that tour, you know. And but we went out every night and just played as hard as we could, and we just rocked. And you know, and some people got it, some people didn't, but we you know, I've heard for years that that's where people saw us and started liking us. And so you know, we'll always be thankful for the Dream Theater guys for taking us out. They were really good guys and great to us, and you know, really appreciate that.
If Dream Theater was not at their peak, you know, you said you guys were maybe at your peak, but if Dream Theater was not at their peak, it was certainly a special moment for the band. So you having seen Dream Theater, I kind of wondered, as we were leading into all this, you talking about going to see them, like once you kind of get inside the organization, watching these guys play shows night after night, like what were the interesting things that stuck out to you about these guys, you know, individually and collectively?
You know, I think one of the things is just how dedicated they were to the music. You know, they weren't out there to party and, all that stuff, which was great with us because we weren't really a party band. We were out there to do our jobs and to entertain people. And so it wasn't about, hey, going out and partying and getting drunk or whatever, and that's kind of the way they were. They just did their jobs, and they were just so dedicated. And this one story I'll never forget is one morning I walked into one of their hotel rooms, and my young's sitting there on the bed with his bass, and it was like 10 in the morning. We don't play till that night, and he's sitting there, just doing the scales, and I'm like, geez, John, man, you practice all the time, and he's like, yeah. He was really quiet, barely said a word the whole tour, but he was a good guy when you talked to him, but rarely said much. And anytime you saw him, he was just sitting there, shredding. And I'm like, John, man, you just practice all the time. And he's like, yeah, well, you kind of have to when you play this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, makes sense. Me, I'm going to the mall right now, but
That's awesome.
But yeah, they were just we hung out a lot with Portnoy. He'd clown around with us and stuff, but a lot of guys like Petrucci and my young, they were just like constantly practicing, so that's one thing that I remember about them, is they were just really dedicated.
So Kevin Moore, obviously this was like his only world tour that he ever did with the band. Do you have any recollections of him, or what was he like? There's not a lot out there about him. So
yeah, he was kind of quiet too, but a really good guy after you got to know him. And when we started the tour with him, we were trying to joke with him and loosen up, but he was kind of slow to grab onto it, but gradually he was starting to loosen up. And at the beginning of the tour, he was in kind of I don't know, he kind of had a rock outfit and whatnot, and every night we would go on like in shorts and t-shirts, and we were just, that's who we were. And by the end of the tour, we had Kevin wearing shorts. And we were like, yeah, mission accomplished, So that was funny. Yeah. So he was a really good guy. And I remember that a lot about him. But also, while I'm on the idea of the clothes, the last date of that show that we played with them, the last night of the show, we had given them all Galactic Cowboy t-shirts, and it just had Galactic Cowboys is all it had on the shirt. And everyone in the band wore a Galactic Cowboy shirt on that night in Dream Theater. They went on with Galactic Cowboy shirts, except Portnoy, who played, bare chested without his shirt on. And he wrote in pen across his chest, Galactic Cowboys. So we kind of, made a little impression on him that way. I know they dug our vocals, and I noticed in future albums they started having a few harmonies here and there. I'm not going to take credit for that, but I think we, kind of maybe influenced them a little. So anyway, they were good friends to us though, and great guys.
Yeah. I know there's a question from one of our listeners, but I want to jump in with what you just said there, like, what they might have taken from you guys inspirationally. On the flip side of that, what do you think you guys, Galactic Cowboys, took inspiration from the experience of playing shows with Dream Theater?
Well, what I took away was that I will never, ever be that good. I mean, it was just like almost discouraging, and to the point where you just go, I just got to do what I do, because they are on another planet. They are just such phenomenal musicians that, I can't, I've just got to do what I do and try to make it the best I can be. Cause I can't even compare myself to that kind of level of musicianship. So, I mean, I don't know. I think before we even toured with them, I think we always had a little bit of that progressive side to us.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, listening to Rush and Kansas and loved bands like that had that, side to them. And I always thought, that was the cool thing about Dream Theater is they took all that stuff and made it their own and, took it in different directions and added metal to it and all that. So, that's kind of what I took from them.
What was kind of the vibe with those guys? I mean, did they kind of almost, I've always wondered this because like you said, like only Portnoy would kind of really hang out with you guys. So like, were they a little more serious back then? Were they still a little bit loose? Like what was their kind of vibe? Because like you said, Mayung's practicing at 10 o'clock in the morning, but the other guys, I mean, could they loosen up? I mean, were they like a typical band, or was it really kind of more all business?
Like, did you hang with the Labrie at all?
I didn't that much. Our singer Ben did. He'd talk to, they'd have their conversations. I know one night they got into it wasn't a debate or anything big, but they were talking religion one night on the bus and
wow. So
we all had our times. I went out for lunch one day with Petrucci and we got a Philly cheesesteak, and he's like, Monty, you're a real pissa. and I'm like, okay, is that good? And he's like, yeah, you don't know what a pissa is? It's a good guy. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, thanks, man. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah, they were, like I said, they weren't crazy guys or anything like that. We were a little more goofy back then, and everything. But they were regular guys who were just enormously talented. And it's funny, because the last time I ever actually saw them all together was I think it was the last tour Portnoy played with them. And he invited me out to the show, and I went backstage afterwards. And I hadn't seen those guys in years. And I went around, I was just saying hi to them. And I had just put out this solo album. And I've done like 3 solo albums under the name Crunchy. Mm-hmm. And so it was a time when I was kind of trying to get my solo stuff out there. And I think I might even taken some CDs to them or something. And Petrucci comes over, and I was hoping to maybe, talk about my solo stuff or music or something. And he goes, hey, Monty, so you still doing the painting? And I was like, yeah, I am. Yeah. And I walked away and I thought, maybe that's what I should be doing. That seems to be what people remember about me, and somehow, he just remembered that I was a painter. And so that's what we talked about that night. And so anyway, that's what I'm doing now mostly. So maybe that's best.
So real quick, I have another question about another tour story that I heard about. I heard that there was a brawl after a show, like at a bar somewhere, like both bands were kind of involved. And rumor has it that Portnoy got it on video and actually used the video camera to hit somebody that night.
Wow. I vaguely remember that, but I wasn't there. I don't think I was there. So I don't have like firsthand knowledge of it, but I do remember something like that, like something crazy went down like that.
I just wanted to I wanted to know if Portnoy actually showed you guys afterwards, like, hey, check out this video.
Man, I don't remember that, but I just remember us, everything being pretty chill. But I don't remember any brawls. I know I wasn't involved. So.
Here's the way
All
I
right.
interpret that, John. Monty was actually waiting in the getaway vehicle to drive the guys once they came out from the brawl.
Yes, I was told to never speak of this again.
Yeah.
I knew I should have asked you what not to talk about before we
Yeah.
brought you on. Like anything off limits here, Monty? Like what
Yeah,
the
really.
You just found it.
Yep, there it is. I stumbled upon it. So we actually have a Galactic Cowboys question for you. So Engage the Broken wants to know, Fear Not from Machine Fish is one of the greatest rock songs of all time. And you have the greatest podcast of all
Wow.
time. Would you please ask him to share about that song?
Well, yeah, it was a song I had written, and it was actually had another name to it. It was called Turn Back. And I ended up, it didn't go on the first album or whenever I wrote it. So I rewrote it completely with new words and changed it to Fear Not. And it's just, it's kind of a song about not being afraid and to have strength and courage and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a kind of a minor hit for us in Houston, Texas. One of the radio stations there decided to just play it constantly. And it actually, started, people started to catch on to who we were there in Houston. And the next time we played there, the place was packed. And when we played that song, they went crazy. And I was like, wow, so this is what it's like to have a hit. If we ever did, this would be kind of what it was like. So yeah, those are some thoughts on Fear Not.
So kind of tagging on that just a little bit, you mentioned early on in this conversation that record labels didn't always understand Galactic Cowboys. And that's something that you hear a lot when you're talking to bands and artists, if they're talking about the weird small label that, went out of business right after the record came out or whatever the case was. But those first two records, you guys were on Geffen Records. So I just wondered, how'd you guys get on Geffen?
That was, well, when we first started, we'd only been together like 6 months, and we started getting some label interest. And we were on the same management as King's X. And so our management, when they had the chance, they would try to sell us too. And the guy from Geffen, actually, we had a big showcase where all these labels showed up and to check us out. And the guy from Geffen came the night before the showcase. He was like, no, I want to come separately, So he showed up at our practice studio, and we just went through the songs for him, just him. And he walked away, and we thought, well, he didn't like us, And next thing you know, he was like telling our manager, yeah, what do you guys, what do you want for these guys? And we ended up signing with Geffen. They told us we were going to be huge. And then the same guy that signed us signed Nirvana.
Oh.
And so, yeah. And so after that, it was, they had no use for us. And we went on to Metal Blade and made 4 or 5 more albums. And so, yeah, that's the way it goes sometimes. But the industry is heartless.
Do you meet John Kolodner anywhere and all that? Do you have a Kolodner story?
Yeah, I do. So when Nirvana got big, the guy that signed us was Gary Gersh. And
That's what I was wondering, yeah.
Yeah, and he left almost immediately after Nirvana exploded to be the president, I think it was, of Capitol.
Mm-hmm.
And so he left, and that left us with nobody. And our manager at the time said, well, they're going to give you John Kolodner.
Oh, shit.
And we're like, okay, cool, And so he comes out to Chicago. I'm thinking it was maybe on the Dream Theater tour. I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, he showed up in Chicago, and we went out to dinner with him after we played, and we sat around, and he was like, saying, yeah, we're going to have fun, you know? And I'm like, yeah, can we do some fun videos? Yeah, we're going to do some fun videos, you know? And we're like, okay, cool. You know, this is going to be great. And the next thing you know, it's like, nah, you guys are dropped. And yeah, and you can go home now. we were on the road with Sabotage.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And one day I got a call from our manager, and he's like, yeah, you've been dropped. You can get on the bus and go home. And so we did, and it was over, you know, and so I went home and started doing demos, and then Metal Blade got a hold of us and was like, yeah, let's do some more albums. And so we got back together and did more albums.
That's awesome, man. So do you still keep in touch with any of the Dream Theater guys? Like, last Dream Theater question for you, or is that still, like, you know, way in the past?
I haven't talked to any of them in years except for Portnoy.
Okay.
He invited me out when he was playing with Avenged Sevenfold, and I went out and saw them, and he was great, and so were they. And yeah, I hung out with him then and them, and I think that's the last time I think I've seen him. But we still, you know, we're on Facebook, friends, and you know, like each other's stuff and all that kind of things. But yeah, that's about it. I haven't, you know, run into any of those guys since then.
Sure.
One final Dream Theater question that's crucial for myself and John. You mentioned Chicago. In all your times in Chicago with Dream Theater or otherwise, did you and the Galactic Cowboys ever eat Gino's Pizza?
Man, I'm pretty sure it was Gino's. I you know, I just know every time I go to Chicago, I'm gonna get the Chicago big fat pizza, man. That is
Nice.
That's my favorite, is the Chicago style pizza. So yeah. Are you in Chicago, Matt?
I'm in Cleveland. Both John and I are in Cleveland, but we love the big fat Chicago pizza.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Matt grew up or lived for a while.
Joliet,
in Joliet, yeah. And then the first time I ever went on the road to see Dream Theater was on the 6 Degrees tour, and he went with me and two of our other friends, and he's like, I gotta take you to this pizza place. I'd never had deep dish, and it was Gino's. And literally to this day, I will not set foot in Chicago without going to Gino's. Like I have tickets to see Wolfgang Van Halen on January 21st, and all my friends already know. Like, look, man, dinner is already set. We're going to Gino's before the show. Yeah. That's just happening. That's how it's working.
So yeah.
So these days, Monty, you're doing your art thing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and, you know, show off some of your stuff. I'll pull some of your paintings up here for people to see, because it's really impressive stuff.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years. You know, I woke up one morning and, you know, I was for a while I was doing murals for the School of Rock in Kansas City, and I would do these big giant rock stars on their wall, and it was just the funnest gig I've ever had. I mean, probably including music. I just had such a blast, you know, painting the rock stars. And, you know, a couple of years later, I got up one morning and went, why don't I do smaller, you know, paintings of rock stars and make a website? And so that's what I did. And now I've got my own website. It's called montycolvinart.com. And I've got all kinds of rock stars on there and paintings, and now I've got prints for sale. They're, you know, a lot more affordable than the paintings, even though I don't charge a ton for paintings, but still, you know, for somebody that just wants to spend $30-$40, you know, and get a cool print of, you know, a rock star that they love, I'm the place to go.
And you got sorry, Matt, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, what, like, with any of these, like, what do you work from, like, inspirationally, like for Hetfield, like, what did you use as your inspiration? Because, like, I love that, like, it's very detailed. Like, he's wearing a Sam Hain t-shirt. Like you obviously capture a crucial Hetfield period. So I wondered, like, how you kind of arrived at that.
I love that period because that's when I kind of discovered him. Was the early kind of stages where he just looked so freaking cool with that Explorer guitar. I ended up having a base made and with that Explorer body, just because I just loved the way he looked with that thing and those black wristbands. And so, yeah, when I did that one, I was like, I want to do one of his early days when he just looks so cool, and a little older now, and still think he's cool, but back then, man, Hetfield was just so badass.
Papa Het now.
Yeah, he's more like that uncle, that you've got, but
Uncle. Nice.
We all get older, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah, this is another one of yours I really dig, the Randy
So
Rhoads
cool.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I saw you on the Classic Metal show, with our buddy Aiken, and I was glad that he pulled some stuff up. I mean, the detail and everything. I mean, I think what really comes across is, and I took a ton of art in high school and a little bit into college and stuff like that, so I'm kind of familiar with this sort of thing. But it's the emotion that you capture in their faces, like that's always so difficult. I mean, the light and stuff is one thing, and the musculature and everything, but actually getting the emotion on the face is so difficult. Was that something that just kind of came naturally to you? Did you actually have to work at that? Because that's really difficult to do.
Nothing I've ever done in my life came naturally. Whether it was playing guitar or drawing, painting, whatever, I just had to work my ass off for years. And yeah, that's really where it's at. I did go to college. I got a degree in art, but even then, my teachers were like, "You've got a long way to go," And instead of just being discouraged and giving up, I just went, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to just keep working at it. And I've been doing this for years now, and it's still not easy. I mean, I still, it's still hard to paint and draw, but I've gotten fairly accomplished at it, and now I'm able to sell it, to people, and who really seem to enjoy it too.
So we have your chair wired with electricity that if you answer and say they're all your children, I think you'll get like a brutal shock. But what's the art piece that you're especially proud of out of the ones that you've done across the years?
Well, they're all my children. You weren't kidding.
Sorry, I just killed your guest, John.
Wow.
Thanks, man.
Let's see. I'm really proud. I did a Billy Gibbons.
Yeah.
I showed you guys earlier. And I really like that. I did an Eddie Van Halen I'm really proud of. I even did a Johnny Ramone.
Nice.
My cousin was Dee Dee Ramone. And
wow.
Kidding.
So yeah, and so I'm like a big Ramones fan. I think they were the coolest. And so I did a Johnny Ramone that I really love, and I just made a print of it. So if you want one yourself, those are cool. But probably not a lot of Dream Theater fans are into the Ramones, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah, those are some of my favorites. But yeah, I feel like I'm getting better all the time. So
You're a Houston guy, and
not anymore, but
okay, where are you these days?
I moved to Kansas City
Okay.
back in the 90s, lived there for about 20 years. Earlier this year, I moved to Colorado, and that's where I am now, and loving it.
All right, so Houston, Kansas City, good barbecue. Do they have good barbecue in Colorado?
I don't really know.
Hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't really checked that out yet. I eat a lot of just Chinese and stuff like that. So.
But you're not vegetarian, are you?
Oh no.
Okay, because I'm good at asking people questions like that are vegetarian. So
no, I'm a big meat eater. Yeah, there's Billy Gibbons.
Yeah, so where I was going with that was like, you being, a Houston guy at heart originally, did you meet Billy? In general, like these paintings, like how many of these people have you actually met yourself?
I did meet Billy. It was really brief.
Yeah.
It was, I've met so many people like that, but I haven't, I don't have that many great stories.
Hmm.
It's like I met Chris Squire for about
wow.
2 seconds, and I went, Mr. Squire, you have the bass tone. And he went,
So true.
ugh. And that was it.
Ugh.
And I went, thank you. I'm out of here.
Sweet.
I have so many stories like that. You know, I meet somebody and they just go, hi. And I met Chris Cornell one time and he just looked at me and went, you know,
Like,
and I
cool.
was like, nice to meet you. And so, you know, I don't know. But yeah, I met Billy and just said hi to him and that was about it. But yeah.
You really capture his essence with that, like with the painting. Like it looks like, I mean, just like John was saying, like whether it's Hetfield or Randy Rhoads, like, I mean, you really capture the essence of all these guys. And it's like, and that's just signature Billy right down to the outfit. It looks just awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love ZZ Top. Loved yeah. Billy is badass.
So a couple more questions for you, man, and then we'll let you go. Really appreciate you coming on, man. This has been
Yeah,
such
man.
a blast.
Thanks for having me.
Anytime, man. Anytime. We like I said, we've been pimping this out for quite a while on our
Awesome.
show that you got you coming on. Everyone's been really excited. So so now you take commissions, correct? So if someone just, you know, wants to hit you
Yeah.
up on your website and say, hey man, like can you do a painting of this and such? Like you'll actually do like custom work for people, correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I've done a lot of it, you know. And the thing is it doesn't have to be somebody that is a legend.
Yeah.
You know, I've had I had a friend have me paint oh shoot. The guy from Lillian Axe, Blaze.
Oh
The
yeah.
guitar
Stevie
player.
Blaze. Yeah.
Steve Blaze. Yeah, he's like, can you do a painting of Steve Blaze for me? I'm a huge fan of his. And I'm like, all right. And I did, and he loved it. And, you know, I've had people commission me to do, you know, guys from Iron Maiden or, you know, just whoever you want. You know, if you want the drummer for Bang Tango, I'll do it if you can come up with a picture of him, you know. So anyway, you know, I'll just yeah, I can do all sorts of things like that. And so yeah, get a hold of me if you want something special.
Yeah. I'm already working on my proposal. I want to get you to do a photo of John, but not capture his essence. Like, you know, I'm gonna be like emailing you going, Monty, like how unflattering can we make this? How much is that possible?
I'm not photogenic to begin with, so that's not going to be a very difficult commission for him.
Yeah, I'll just do it realistically.
Exactly.
Go back to your early school years when you were struggling more and draw from that perspective.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh
That's
my
great.
god. So, and like I said at the outset, Monty, you also have the podcast as well. So promote those and tell people you got Art That Rocks, you know, ties into this, and then you've got Monty's Rockcast.
Yeah, Monty'sRockcast.com. And I try to put out an episode every month. I've been doing it about 12 years now. Seems hard to believe.
That's crazy.
Then, you know, I think it's just kind of grown over the years. But yeah, I try to do one once a month if I can. And I should have a new episode out like in a couple days from now. So it'll be my year-end special. And I give out my Rockcasty Awards for the best and worst of the year. So I'll be hammering on certain people that deserve it and, you know, throwing praise onto also people that deserve it. So
I think you should add a last second award and just dump it in there real quick. And you know, we've got to get my buddy Matt here to win an award, and I think it should be largest forehead on a podcast host. So
I got it. I scored it. I'm the walkaway. I'm the runaway winner.
Exactly.
yeah,
So
nice.
And you also have Art That Rocks, which is really fun.
The video show, it's on Heavy Metal Television.
Nice.
.com or .net. And every other Friday, I think we switch with you guys every other Friday, you know, my little painting show comes on, where I sit there and do a painting from start to finish of different rock stars. And as I'm doing it, I tell a story or tell what I think about them or whatever. And by the end of the little episode, they're not long episodes, but by the end of the episode, I'm done with the painting, and you can see it from the drawing to the finish of it. And it's been kind of cool. So
That's
yeah,
so
check that
cool.
out.
Yeah, I love it. I've watched a whole bunch of those, and it's
Nice.
like you said, they're what, like 6-7 minutes long or something like
Yeah,
that.
usually
So-
we'll have two segments. They'll play a segment that's about 6-7 minutes long, show some videos of that artist that I just did, the whoever it was that I just painted.
Mhm.
And then it'll come back with another one. And so they're not they're not super long that you have to sit there and watch me make every single stroke, so it's,
Sure.
they go pretty fast.
So Gary Robb says, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Gary.
Gary.
Gary Robb says, I am the proud owner of 3 commissioned works from Monty: Steve Harris, Bruce Dickinson, and Adrian Smith. So I have a feeling you're going to have 3 more commissions coming from
Yeah.
Gary here in the
Yeah.
future.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's got to
Gotta
get
complete
Blaze
the
Bailey
band.
on the wall.
Yeah.
There's the 7th. There we go.
Let's do a Dave Murray. Yeah. Yeah. Gary's awesome. Hey to Gary.
That's awesome. Well, Monty, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. The stories were great. Again, I love your artwork. I think we talked offline. I definitely, once my bonus comes from work in March, I'm not going to tell my wife, but there may be a commissioned Eddie Van Halen painting coming in the mail for me that I'll get in touch with you about.
Nice.
So
Nice.
Let's do it.
for sure. So
All
yeah,
right.
so MontyColvinArt.com. Go there to check out all the Monty stuff. Get a commission, buy a print. They make amazing Christmas gifts, guys. You saw it on the screen if you're watching the video podcast. If you're just listening to the audio, please go to MontyColvinArt.com and check those out. Like you said, you can get prints right there. And check out Art That Rocks on Heavy Metal Television, and obviously Monty's Rockcast, which is just a hilarious show. It's great, very entertaining. So thanks again, man. We really appreciate it, Monty.
Thank you guys. You guys rule. Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man.
Take care,
so much
brother.
fun.
All right, man.
See ya.
See you, man.
Well, there he
That
goes.
was a lot of fun, man.
That was awesome.
I
That was
feel
such
bad.
a
Like
blast.
we should plug his website, MontyColvinArt.com again. And the part that we didn't mention is kind of like Cameo, but anybody that orders a painting from Monty, you, John Drake, host of Talking Into Infinity, no matter the miles, you will drive it to their house personally. So
I will
that's
do
very
that.
generous.
Yep, I signed up for that, so we forgot to mention that. I saved Monty some shipping. I get to see the country, so there you go.
Your wife gets some time away, so it's all
Yeah,
good.
she
Everybody wins.
Yep, she gets a break, man. So yeah, Monty was awesome, man. That was a blast. Like I said, we've been talking about doing that for several months, and we've been definitely pimping that one out, and he was just fantastic. So, all right. So the second half of the show, it is, this is the time when we get into the record that Monty was talking about touring with Dream Theater on, and I don't think I'm telling tales out of school to say that this is pretty much universally considered like almost every Dream Theater fan's favorite record. And if it's not their favorite, it is definitely the one that, is the most influential and is the most popular, and their highest quality record. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, do you, think that they like literally peaked with this record? Because they have other records that I love a lot, but like before this, holding up my actual old school compact disc, I was like looking at this, man, 8 tracks, and it's like there's not a single track I would take off this record, top to bottom. Like I think that I would put this in the category of albums that I have from bands and artists that like I think every song on this record, and we can certainly dig into this later, but like I think for me, every song on this record is I don't want to say every song's perfect, but every song's really good. Like there's not a song I would take off this record.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Rock and Roll Podcast. Hello, everyone. What's up, man? Good to see you. Our buddy Aiken is busting balls in the chat. John delivering Monty's art would be a new service called Door Douche. So
I thought
there
you
we
were
go.
commenting on yourself. I just thought you were typing that. So I love that actually came from Chris. That's awesome.
That's our buddy busting my balls. But yeah, to your point, yeah, I completely agree with you. I was I was actually thinking that very thing myself today. You know, there's certain bands that you're a fan of,
Yeah.
where you just kind of go, okay, this is a perfect record. Like everything on it is great. You know, for me, it would be something like And Justice for All, or, you know, Operation Mindcrime, something like that. And
Yeah.
this record definitely is that. You know, there's just there's no weak spots. Even, you know, something, you know, really short and concise and to the point, like Wait for Sleep, is just beautiful melodically. It's got a really cool atmosphere to it. And we'll, you know, dig into that when we go track by track in a minute here. But no, I completely agree with you on that. It's, you know, and in terms of them peaking, it's so hard to say. I think it might be their best songwriting. It's so hard to say peaking though, because it's hard to say, yeah, it's all downhill from here. You know what I mean? So that's a really difficult one to answer. So
Yeah, and I mean, I'm always the guy that, like, when people, you know, when I'm talking to musicians, you know, like, you sometimes wonder if, like, the musician's going, like, oh man, that guy. But I'm a sequencing guy too, and it's like, and I love the sequencing on this record. Like, it's just like it's sequenced really well.
yeah, I completely agree with that. I actually, I know you probably didn't catch it, but you know, I mean, Pull Me Under, you know, the hit song, you have it first, and then Learning to Live, our last episode, we ranked the Dream Theater album closing songs, and that was my number one. You know,
Yeah, I see that.
it is an absolutely perfect way to close the record. It's, you know, I completely agree with you, and it's like a kind of, I mean, even you just look at it, it goes, you know, rock tune, mellow tune, and they, you know, they just got it right on all aspects on this album.
Yeah, and I mean, Gibson Les Paul's there in the comments talking about, like, you know, introduction to Dream Theater. So, like, you know, like, how did you kind of get introduced to this record?
So yeah, I want to bring this up because this is kind of blasphemous. Our buddy Gibson Les Paul here.
Oh,
He
I didn't
says,
see that part. Yeah.
Yep. Gibson Les Paul, good to see you, man. He says, Images and Words was my introduction to Dream Theater. I'm not going to say I don't like it, but it's basically 2 songs and out for me. That is
That is blasphemy all the way.
yeah. Gibson Les Paul bringing the hot takes. My introduction to Images and Words was kind of weird because it, you know, I told this story on our very first episode, but when Pull Me Under came out in '92, I'd seen the video.
Yeah.
And I loved the song. I was 16, you know, you and I were in high school at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't remember the name of the band, but I remember all the long hair and the you know, the colorful guitar and stuff like that. And I was going to the library trying to take out tapes by like Kicks and Trickster and crap, and I very quickly found out that no, these are not the bands, and I kind of lost sight of it, and I couldn't figure out who it was. Well, my buddy Andy, you know, who we went to Chicago with, we just, you know, talked to Monty about that. We were driving on his car, and he had Images and Words, and it was all the noodling parts, and he still to this day makes fun of me, and I was like, man, these assholes got to pick a style.
Yeah.
And I was all annoyed by it. Well, then fast forward to, you know, he's in college. 3 years later, I was 19, and I had gone to see him at Hiram, and he's like, I went to his dorm room. He's like, yeah, I'm finishing up a paper. Just sit down and want to listen to music or something for like a half hour. I'm almost done. I said, okay. And I pulled out, you know, I saw the cover for Images and Words sitting on his desk, and I turned it over and I saw Pull Me Under. I was like, oh my God, I've been looking, that's the band I was looking for like 3 years ago. I love this song. So I put it on, and then I let it play, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. And he just starts laughing his ass off. And I was like, what's so funny? He says, you remember that band you said needs to pick a style? I'm like, oh yeah, them. And he says, this is them. You're loving the record you were making fun of. I was like, holy crap.
I had that happen with Facelift by Alice in Chains. I had a very similar reaction. We went to see them open for Van Halen, you know, Blossom Music Center 91 or whatever it was. And
yep.
I was not... They didn't have a great night. That's the short version. And a few months later, we were at a party and just heard this record that was just insanely amazing. And, you know, I hadn't been like necessarily blasting on Alice in Chains, but, you know, I just asked somebody, I said, you know, who is this? And they're like, oh, Facelift by Alice in Chains. So I went back to my buddy Jim, who I'd gone to the show with. And I said, dude, do you hear this record? And he's like, oh man, this record's unbelievable. I said, this is that band that we hated, Alice in Chains. Like, we were both just blown away. So it's really interesting how you can have an experience like that like just will completely turn you on a band.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's like I sometimes wonder, like maybe my little pea brain wasn't ready for it in '92.
That's a whole
but
nother subject.
yeah, right. So
You can't just put that right out there. I'll just take that and
uh,
I'll run with it like a successful quarterback,
well, you're not too bright. I got to set you up sometimes. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So let's dive into this track by track.
Yeah.
And starting out with "Pull Me Under," we actually have a question. Our buddy Aiken, he asks, why does this song just end the way it does? I know that's probably a known thing, but I have no idea. Did they just run out of their allotted notes for the song? No, that is actually a nod to the Beatles. I don't remember what Beatles song it was, but that was kind
That'd
of a
be
hey,
Day
the
in the
Beatles.
Life, right?
Is it? Well, like I said,
Yeah.
I'm not very familiar with the Beatles catalog, but I know that was Portnoy like, hey man, the Beatles did it. Let's do something like the Beatles.
Yeah.
So that's kind of their nod to them. But so yeah, track 1, "Pull Me Under," the lone quote unquote hit for Dream Theater and the song that started it all. Where do you stand on this song? Because a lot of fans on our show have said they've kind of tired of this song, whereas I never ever get tired of it.
Yeah, I don't get tired of it either. That really was the song that kind of introduced me to Dream Theater, and I was at a record store that you'll recall because it was pretty legendary for folks that recall it at the time here in the Cleveland area. Perry's Rock Pile there in the Parma area or whatever,
Yep.
And Perry was a really interesting guy. And it's like I walked into the store and he would always have like these videos playing on a small television. And so it was on that particular video compilation. They had the video for Pull Me Under. And I saw that video and I was just transfixed. And I said to him, like, what is this? And he's like, Dream Theater, so that was really, I think I bought the album that same day. And I'm with you, man. Like, it's a song I never get tired of.
Yeah, I think what's interesting for me on that one, and by the way, our buddy Kale McLeish, what's up, man? He says the Beatles song is "She's So Heavy."
Oh, okay, yeah, there we go.
So there we go.
So we were
Gibson,
both wrong.
Yeah,
I guess you didn't guess officially, so really it's just me. I was wrong.
No. Gibson Les Paul says Portnoy's snare drive me nuts. It sounds like a punch from an '80s karate movie. Those are actually the kick and the snare are the triggers used on the Firehouse record that came out the year before, I want to say.
Look at you, nerd. That's a good little nerd fact.
David Prater and Gibson. I will tell you this. If you listen to the greatest quote unquote greatest hit record,
sure.
Portnoy removed those triggers.
They remixed it.
Yeah, and I do not like the sound of it. It's maybe I'm so used to hearing the '80s sounding triggers that are on there, but yeah, no, I do not like it. But
yeah, I do like that, and that I was thinking about that prior to tonight, and I just wondered. You have to figure that they probably did remix that entire record, and I'd love to hear that entire remix of the album if they did the whole thing.
Sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. One of the
John's like, no, I don't want to hear it at all, ever. If you guys have that in your vault, keep it there. Signed, John Drake.
I'm always iffy on remixes. Bands either get it completely right or completely wrong. There never seems to be that middle point. But when I was listening to the song a few times today, one of the things that struck me is, and it kind of goes throughout the whole record as well. The hooks, and not just the chorus, but the verses as well. I never really noticed kind of the musicality that's going on in the song, even something that's kind of for them as straightforward as like a verse chorus verse, whatever. There's like solos in there, but I mean it's there's the chords kind of rise in the verses, and you don't really notice it because of the vocal, and then in the chorus he's just like holding out like the same chord for the first part of it, and it's driven by that huge vocal harmony that they're doing. And I'd never really noticed that before. So that was really interesting to me. So, and it doesn't really stand out because of the fact that the vocals are so catchy. And that was really fascinating to me. So I don't know if you've ever noticed that. I don't know how deeply you dig into actual like musicianship parts of stuff like that.
No, I do. And it's always interesting because they're one of those bands that like, I think that each person takes something differently from their songs. Like each person, like yourself, can pull something different out of the songs, and so that I want to go back and listen to that because that's something I haven't ever picked up on. But I do think that they bury a lot of those audio type of Easter eggs in the songs for that fans, whether you're just kind of more of a fan that like just enjoys listening to the songs, or as you're kind of saying, a musician that really likes to kind of like pull stuff like that apart. Like there's something there for everybody in those songs. they're one of those bands that I never accused Dream Theater of not putting thought into every aspect of a song, every part, every piece, because I know they do.
Yeah, for sure. My buddy Kaylee says, "Pull Me Under." I'm over it. Glad I saw it as part of my first show, Images and Words 25th. But this is definitely in my lower ranks for this album. It's so good, but I don't like it. I don't know. I get where fans could be tired of it. For me, it's one of those things, and maybe it's a nostalgia thing. But when you hear that doom, 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 you're like, oh yeah, like it kind of brings you back, because it's especially for people like me and you, it's our gateway.
Yeah, 100%.
We heard it as it was happening. So
yep.
So moving on to track 2, Another Day. This song really took me by surprise, because I thought it was a very interesting choice. It's a great choice. You mentioned sequencing earlier.
Yeah.
But coming off of, something pretty ballsy like Pull Me Under, and then you go into this basically what, at times sounds adult contemporary type of a ballad type of a song.
It's a real hard shift.
Yeah, it was, and it's, it's a very Dream Theater-y choice, Dream Theater-ish, however you want to phrase it. So I love it, but it's definitely, there's some balls to making that decision.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I mean, I think, this was the first record that most of us, unless you had heard the previous record, this is like the first record that a lot of us like heard from Dream Theater. So, this is one of many records that like, you put it on and you hear a song like Pull Me Under. Like when I hear a song like Pull Me Under, that sets me up for a whole different expectation of what's going to follow with song 2 and song 3, etc. And so they really throw a huge curveball, which, I think that always kind of attracted me to a band when bands did that kind of thing. But early on, that was something that like I still was pretty floored when a band would do that. So, it's an interesting twist. I don't think it was one that I heard at the time that I was like going, oh, I can't believe they did this. I don't like this. I'm going to throw this CD out the window. But if anything, like it just kind of like showed me, I was like, all right, this is a band that like, they're not just one thing. Like they're going to like, they can go to a lot of different places. So I was, if anything, if I was intrigued by Pull Me Under, I was even more intrigued after I heard Another Day to like continue taking the ride through the rest of the record.
Yeah. I've always wondered what people would think, because after Images and Words, obviously, Awake separated the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, sure.
As the saying goes, because if you stuck with the
so
band,
am I the chaff and you're the wheat? Like, what's, because I took Awake and I just wanted to throw it right out the window.
Yeah, well, you're wrong. Yeah, you're wrong. Yeah. So yeah, whatever the bad part is of the wheat and chaff, you're that. But
yeah,
but no, I mean, if you stuck with the band on Awake, for you, obviously you're a fan, and if you fell off, you were just an Images and Words person. So, starting with Awake, once you have the opening song, if they give you those curveballs, you're in for the ride. You're okay with it. There's more to come.
Yeah.
But on Images and Words, it's like for people that just got a hold of them on the radio, I've always wondered what it's like to all of a sudden hear, Another Day come in, like, what the hell is this? Like, is Pull Me Under the only heavy song they have, and it's just going to be this, because the one thing that I always vividly remember was, as I said, I'd lost track of Pull Me Under, but the first time I heard it Another Day in 95, I remember the saxophone part. So I had heard it on the radio a bunch of times, so that stuck out to me. I was like, oh my God, I've heard this like that.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was on like an adult contemporary station. Like I said, because, saxophone and mellow. I'm like, no, that was Dream Theater. So, personally, for me, this is one of James's all-time best vocals.
I agree.
It's, in my notes for this today, I was wondering, because as I went through the record a few times, I realized it kind of starts on this one. But, the story is very widely told that they had gone a year and a half without a vocalist.
Yeah.
So they just had the music. And then when they found James, they found, he's got this huge range. And they put him through this vocal workout on this record, these crazy high notes.
Yeah.
And it kind of starts on this one. It's like, did James write those for himself, or was the rest of the band just playing with their shiny new toy? Because like that, this song closes with that another day, that, obviously way higher.
That note you can never hit. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. But almost nobody can hit. But I think that really drives the song, and I think I think it adds a certain aggression to it. Like
Yeah.
because the song is kind of mellow. I mean, it's it's got the power chords and stuff, but keeping that vocal way up there keeps a little bit of angst to
Yeah,
the song.
sure.
At least for me. I mean, where do you stand on that?
First of all, like the whole shiny new toy thing, like this is just obviously a guess, but I would guess that like, they would start, putting him through his paces, seeing what he could do. And like my guess is that you get a guy like that when you see that, okay, he can do this, but can he also do this? Like you're just gonna kind of keep going and like you're really excited that like you got this guy that like every time you put him through another trial, he can go through it.
Yeah.
So I think you do hear some of that on this album that like they had like something that really could take them places in the vocalist that they had with James. And I think that they like, maybe that's one reason, why, I love this record so much. I don't know, no, not why I love it so much, but why it's such a peak record for them is because like they just were going for it on every level. They didn't hold back. It doesn't feel like they're holding back on this record at all in any aspect, any area of this record and these songs.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting to me about the vocals, and I think this song is a perfect example, is, they had a year and a half to put together the music for these songs.
Sure,
So obviously it's going to be as polished can get. But to write the vocals, they weren't sure who they were writing for. They knew what kind of voice they were writing for. So it's like, they were put together much more quickly. And it still sounds like it was. I mean, to me, it sounds like they've been working on those for the same year and a half. I mean, they just absolutely blend seamlessly. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's just incredible, and it's. I mean, John's guitar solo. I mean, Gibson Les Paul says it. Another Day is spectacular. James's vocals are insane, and John's solo is beautiful. One of the two great songs on the album. We've disputed you on that, but I mean, the solo is just perfect. You can tell it just fits so incredibly well.
Yeah.
And it's got the shred aspects to it and everything, but it's also that perfect melodic, anchor right in the middle of the song so that it doesn't really drop off. So
Totally agree. It's,
yeah.
I mean, for what a lot of people would consider to be, hearing a band's first record, like if, and in a sense, I mean, this is their quote unquote major label debut.
Yep.
I mean, Another Day is just an astounding song for anybody to have as the first or second song on their record. So it's just like,
Yep.
if Pull Me Under, I think that your average music fan will give a band, a few songs, the first few songs of an album, especially in the days where it was like a CD and it wasn't just like a streaming thing where you just punch through like, X number of tracks and then you're off to the next album in the 4 billion albums you have, as a Spotify user or whatever. I think that if they're taking the ride and they didn't exactly dig what they heard with Pull Me Under, even if it's not their trip, you hear Another Day, and I think you would have to be a pretty dead music fan to hear that song and not just be blown away. Even if you don't dig it, like I think you still would have to be like, you know what, this is not my thing, but I got to give it to these guys. These guys have some chops.
Yeah. And I back to your sequencing thing, I was thinking about this as you were mentioning it. It's like, I think it's a perfect follow-up in a way to Pull Me Under because you've got the heavy stuff in Pull Me Under, and now you've got obviously this. I would argue that Another Day is the most hooky song on Images and Words. It's and I think it's kind of like a sandwich. You put it together, and that's what the rest of the record is. All those aspects of the first two songs, smushed together. So, moving to track 3. Take the Time, the second single off of the record. This to me is kind of one of 3 similar songs on the album. I think you can lump this one in with Metropolis and Under a Glass Moon. They're all similar length, kind of similar presentation. And I never get tired of them. I mean, this is where you really start, I think this was everybody's true introduction to what Dream Theater was going to be all about. And it just, it had, the time changes and the crazy musicianship, and it really is all over the place. And I think those 3 songs are kind of something that they've been striving to recreate ever since.
Yeah.
And they've gotten real close and it's awesome, but they've never quite hit it, because they've said on a couple records, oh, we wanted to take our like 14-minute song structures and break them down to like, 6 to 10. And when you look at Images and Words, Take the Time is a perfect example of that exact style of songwriting. And it feels epic and it feels like, there's so much to it, but it's like a 7, maybe 8-minute song.
Yeah, and it's 8 minutes. I mean, I've got it right here. It is 8 minutes and 21 seconds. So I think that like this was definitely one of the early bands for me that like basically showed me the difference between a long song that was artfully constructed and on the other side of things, a long song that's just a long song. And take the Time really is perhaps the one that perfectly illustrates for me what I love about how Dream Theater like builds a song out like this, because Take the Time for those 8 minutes and 20 seconds, let's say up to like, about 7.5 minutes in, it's just building and building and building. And when they hit that point where like everything just like climaxes and, they go find all you need in your mind if you
Yep.
take the time, like that section is so cool.
Yeah. It's like it builds, and then it just gets into that like a nice like regular beat, and it's kind of like a groove, like find all you need in your mind, and it just kind of like rides that out. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've always loved that. It's like that build, and then kind of like the deep breath at the end.
Yeah, and if you're a headphones guy and you're listening to that song on headphones, like it just was like a cool moment to hear, like a total cool headphone record, and that was like one of the cooler moments on the record. So
Yep.
I'm looking at the credits too, by the way, like, and I forgot that like one of the things that Kevin Moore kicked in, like I mean, he was the lyricist on like songs like Pull Me Under, so I do wonder, like I think that like we've heard that like he was difficult to get along with, like, but it's like I wonder how much of a loss that was, like losing him from the lineup from the perspective of like having that extra lyricist around.
Yeah, I know that Portnoy and Petrucci have both been on record as saying that was the concern. You could get somebody that can
Yeah.
do all the crazy keyboards and stuff
Yep.
like that, but when they never really did a lot of lyric writing.
Yeah.
And so they had to then take that over, and it was kind of a burden for them. And it took them a while to get their feet under them where that was concerned. And he really was integral to those first 3 records. I mean, I've said it on previous episodes, but when you go back and listen to When Dream and Day Unite and Images and Words and Awake, they have a certain like classic Dream Theater sound that just isn't there on anything else. Like his style was so, I mean, his style meshed with theirs, I should say, just created a sound that they never, they could never quite get back. And, to the point where, it's interesting to me, going back to the fact that they didn't have a singer for a year and a half. They were really despondent, like considering throwing in the towel, despondent.
Yeah.
And yet this record doesn't sound dark anywhere. It sounds upbeat and inspirational. And
I was gonna say inspirational. Like you have songs like Another Day, you have songs like Take the Time, like just those two right off the bat. Like it's like, come on, man. Like, I hadn't lived enough life to like have real problems, but when you're that age, like you think that you have real problems. And those were songs that definitely, carried me through some days like that, like, as that was the album that I was listening to, like whatever I was going through, I just, there were songs like that that carried me through, so it's for this to be like their first, what I would consider their first real record, like it's very impressive on a lot of levels. Like to write with that level of emotion, like I mean, there's a lot here is very impressive about this record.
Yeah, totally agree.
And the other thing I'll say, by the way, is like Kevin Moore, on the one hand, it's like interesting to consider like what it would have been like if he's the guy that is still with them to this day, but I'm glad that things played out like they did. I'm glad that they took the ride that they did with Derek Sherinian. I'm glad that that they took the ride that they've taken with Jordan Rudess. It's just like I don't want to imagine the Dream Theater story without those two guys coming in.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have my favorite record if Sherinian had not come in, so that would be bad for me.
Yeah, nice, nice.
Sarcasmo Assholio says, the tone on Images and Words drew me in on Pull Me Under and the snare on the whole album. Under a Glass Moon was the most integral song, combined all the best ingredients. Take the Time was radio friendly.
I read that as Take the Time was rad friendly. I was trying to unpack that last part as you were reading through the whole thing. So thanks for reading that correctly.
You need some new glasses, my friend.
I do. I think so. Yeah.
I don't know so much about Take the Time being radio friendly, because I think it would have done a little better for them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I've always like question for you on that note. So Images and Words was just, you know, that lightning in a bottle, right song right before grunge really exploded.
Sure. Yeah.
And so Take the Time, do you think it was just, you know, grunge had finally exploded, so now Take the Time can't, you know, take them to that next level? Or was it just not as catchy as Pull Me Under? Was it really that simple?
I think Pull Me Under was its own thing. And even Pull Me Under, like, you know, just being on the edge of grunge, like, I think that they got kind of the last gasp of being able to get a song like that on the radio. But even that, man, like Pull Me Under, like, that's an interesting song to get on the radio. So I think they kind of got their one shot in an era that a lot of stuff that maybe didn't fit with the rest of the norm was able to get onto radio airwaves. And I don't know, I Take the Time, you know, is a good song. I don't hear that to my ears. I don't hear it as like being a good radio type song.
Yeah.
Do you know, I'm not looking at it. Was there a radio edit for that? Like, because I mean, I could picture them. I don't know. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a hard one for me to see.
Yeah. There was a radio edit, and obviously the video was shortened and stuff like that. But yeah. Z Matrix, as backing up what we said earlier, said the snare sound on Images and Words is a sample. The producer insisted on using it. That would be David Prater. It's also the exact same sample used on the first Firehouse record. Yep, that's exactly what we had talked about.
It's disappointing to me that there's two people in the world that know that, but thank you, Z Matrix. Well, you know, I didn't know that coming into today, so there you go.
Yes, that was the thing. And Portnoy hates the samples, and David Prater, the producer, hates Portnoy, and vice versa. So that was, big bone of contention on that one.
Yeah, in Sarcasmo Asholio, I don't know if you want to put that comment up, but like, totally right. I think you'll agree, John. This was always a great live tune, and like
yes.
That's, you know, I think that the further you and I got into seeing Dream Theater shows, like that wasn't one that they always would play live. So it's like when they would start playing that, I would be really excited because I knew that they were going to jam out on it. So.
Yeah.
Totally
Sarcasmo Asholio, he said, Take the Time they always jammed on live, always in improv when they toured the album. Yeah, for sure. So moving on to Surrounded, one of Brian Hendrickson, my co-host, one of his all-time favorites. He is a keyboard player, so obviously the piano songs have a special place in his heart. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this one? Yet another, it's, you know, kind of in that Another Day vein.
I think so. I think that, you know, it's funny when I look at the track listing for this one, this is the one typically that like I retain the least in memory. It kind of leaves the least impression in my memory. Like, not that I dislike it, but it's just like these other ones, like I see the song title and immediately it's in my head. Surrounded's one of those songs that I have to think about it for a second. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's one that jumps out to me, but yeah, you know, it's one that I like, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
It's the most lukewarm endorsement ever.
It's just kind of there.
That's my quote. It's just kind of there.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this? Well, it's a song on the record. Back to you.
What's my thoughts? It's song number 4 on the album. Back to you, John.
I really like this song. You know, it's got one of my favorite little vocal. It's a very minor thing, but to me, for some reason, it's just always been really cool. Light to dark, dark to light, light to dark.
Oh, yeah.
For some reason, I've always really liked that little jog there.
That's another section very similar to kind of what I called out about the climax and Take the Time. You're right. Yep. I mean, that's another kind of great, like, you know, musical / vocal section on this record is that part on Surrounded for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and again, this one, you know, I think is a little more progressive than Another Day, but it's in that vein, so I love it because I think it flavors the album so well, and it's a good break because, you know, you got to put something, you know, between Take the Time and Metropolis.
Yeah,
there's got to be something a little more simple, I think, that goes there. And I think this is like a perfect song to put there.
And yet, as I look at these lyrics, I want to just smash myself in the face so that all your listeners don't have to, because like, again, like these lyrics are also done by Kevin Moore, and it's like they're really the sections are really artfully constructed. Light to dark, dark to light, light to dark, dark to light. That's pretty generic if you're just like looking at it out of context. You're like, great, I could have written that too. But it's like when you look the way he positioned it within the lyrics for the rest of the song, like this is a good I'm getting severely jogged here. This is like a really good story type song. Like it's got an engaging story, despite the fact that it does not lodge in my brain at all. Even so, I mean, he unspools a very cool story with this song that it takes some talent to do that and not just have it sound cheesy. There's a lot of people that try to be, folks that write story songs that they just end up sounding cheesy and dumb. And he hits the mark with Surrounded, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I know this is live, but when this goes out to the podcast people, you can go back and insert that as my initial response and cut the rest.
I don't do editing, as you know. I suck at
No, I know.
technology.
Oh, and that's Gibson Les Paul's. That's the other song that Gibson Les
Yep.
Paul likes on this record. I wasn't going to ask. I was like, wait for it. I'll just wait to find out what Gibson Les Paul's favorite song is on the record. But
look
this
at
is this is the other favorite song on the record. All right.
Gibson Les Paul bringing in the hot takes again. So the only songs he thinks are great on Images and Words are Another Day and Surrounded. So he's crapping. He is crapping on Metropolis. He's crapping on Learning to Live. He's crapping on Under a Glass Moon.
And he's leaving some notes for Brian, who's not even here. Hey, John, by the way,
Yeah.
When he's back, make sure that you lay this out for Brian,
Yeah. Believe me, Gibson, I was thinking exactly what you were thinking. He says, "Hey, John, you have to tell Brian, the same guy that wrote the lyrics to one of his favorites also wrote Space Dive Vest."
That's such a hardcore slam. Like, it's like, we mentioned Aiken loved like throwing stuff that way when I would be like, just like, dumping on something. He'd be like, all right, you spent all that time dumping on this. Let me tell you this, that same guy that, did this song that you hate also did this song, which I know you really love. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Space Dive Vest has become the bone of contention on the show because Hendrickson hates it and I love it, and to the point where he compared it to a gorilla fart on our last episode.
That's harsh.
And a gorilla fart is
it's Coco the gorilla. We don't need to say anything more.
It's actually a shot. I believe it's Yukon Jack, Jägermeister, and 151.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So that's not good. But yeah, the other thing that I would say about Surrounded is one of my all-time favorite things they've ever done live on the Systematic Chaos, the CD that the live CD that's with that Chaos and Motion, or when they did this song, they did that huge jam at the end of this. I believe it was a Pink Floyd song that they riffed on. And
you're right,
man, and I'm not a big Floyd guy, but that just fit perfectly, and it was beautiful with this song. So that was kick ass. So
yeah, totally agree. I mean, they have a lot of songs like that. I think that's what I like, is they're not one of those bands that'll just take every single one of their songs and make it long for the hell of it. Like the ones that have kind of become jammy favorites over the years, like they have a real art for like pulling out those right songs that like just are natural ones to extend.
Yep. Definitely agree. All right, let's get on to the greatness that is Metropolis. Gibson Les Paul, I apologize, but you are dead wrong in not saying that this is one of the great songs on the record, because it's in my opinion the true first Dream Theater hit, because I think all fans of the band, when they hear the sleigh bells, they go absolutely bananas. And if Pull Me Under was the gateway, Metropolis is the song that kept you there for the remainder of their career, because you were constantly waiting for more Metropolis. This song is just everything you love about Dream Theater in about 9.5 minutes. If Brian and I have talked about this, if you want to describe what is Dream Theater, this is the song that you show them, and it is absolutely just an amazing slab of prog metal perfection.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Like it's just another one of the songs from this record that is just stunning. And I think that like, story wise, like it's got a good, thing that draws you in as well. Yeah, you nailed it right straight out of the gate. You hear those, there's certain songs with certain bands that you hear the thing. And so Dream Theater, you're right. You hear those sleigh bells and you're like, oh yeah, excellent.
Yep. Yeah, I remember when we were at Score,
Yeah.
and that they come out for the encore, and he did he did it on his snare drum, but and then the boom comes in, and we all knew what was coming, and that place just went
Erupted.
crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've always wondered how cool it must have been for people that were experiencing this record for the first time, either on vinyl or on cassette. You get through the first 4 songs and you're like, oh my God, what the hell am I listening to? And then you flip it over and then this comes on and you're like, oh my God. I mean, it's so good. I mean, what came before it was great, but this is so good. It's almost like, okay, now we've warmed you up. Here's what it's all about. It's just, there's what can you say? I remember the first time I heard, the key and guitar, so
Yeah.
and I was like, what in the hell is that? And the bass solo, and it just, I was going, what is this? Who are these guys? This is inhuman. And it makes for such a fun listen, especially if this is something, that you heard, at that time when it came out, you didn't know who they were. You hear that and you're going, what is this? Like,
Yeah, and I mean, you think about some of the sizes of the venues that they were playing on this tour, like initially, as we were talking to Monty, like by the time
yeah.
they were touring with Monty, it's like they're playing, theaters or, just slightly larger venues. Like, so, here in Ohio, like one of the first places, if not the first place they played was Flashes. And I just, dude, I can't imagine,
Yeah.
I can't imagine hearing some of these songs at Flashes. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's, the experience had to have been incredible. Like I've seen, I saw Marty Friedman at the Grog Shop.
Yeah.
And
Nice. Yeah.
I'm like 5 feet away from this guy who's just like one of the most insane musicians you've ever seen. And you're looking around, there's like 100 other people. Like that kind of experience is just outrageous. So to your point, I mean, what would you have given to go back in time and know that that's what's happening, and go to Flashes and see Images and Words and When Dream and Day Unite songs played in front of like 50 people, like 100 people?
Since you asked me, I would absolutely surrender both of your left nuts, which I think are already gone, but I'd give up both of those to like go back and see them in that environment.
Are you insinuating that I have more than 2 testicles?
I'm saying that you at one point had more than 2. You had abnormally, you had 3. But
that was an old
anybody
family
that
secret,
listens
and I
to
don't know
this,
how you got a hold of that.
anybody that listens to this podcast knows that the number is 0 these days. Just like the number of players that'll be taking the field this week with the Browns. So,
Oh my God, we're not going to talk about that. You're
Yeah,
going to make me
yeah.
sad. I'm in a good
Yeah.
mood. Let's not make me sad.
yeah, let's not ruin it. Too late, we ruined it.
Yeah, and again, this song is just, if they played it every show I ever saw, I'd be fine with it.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of bands where I'll go see Megadeth and I'm like, okay, well, I know I'm gonna hear In My Darkest Hour and Peace Cells. I'm like, damn it, like, okay, can we swap those out? But when they play Holy Wars, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I think with Dream Theater, if they were like every show we're gonna play Metropolis, I'd be like, okay.
Yeah, sure.
I don't have a problem with it. And
Yeah.
back to the live thing. In case anybody has not seen this, you can check this out on YouTube. But in 2004, when they did the When Dream and Day Reunite show, when they did the
so good.
DVD for Yitzhak Jam, from Los Angeles, the encore was Metropolis with Derek Sherinian coming out to do keyboards with Jordan Rudess, and Charlie Dominici came out to sing with James Labrie, and it's absolutely
so cool.
Yeah, it is such a kick-ass version of that song. And yeah, I think this song is basically the Dream, like I said, the Dream Theater blueprint, because this is what you are going to get for the rest of their careers. You're going to have the unison solos, the harmony solos,
Yep.
the soaring vocals, the big kind of epic storytelling in the lyrics, and a lot of other stuff that was to come. And it just really is the blueprint for the rest of their career to me. I think it's their most important song that they've ever done.
It's a bold statement, but I think it's correct.
Thank you, sir. All right.
Yeah.
So moving on to track 6, Under a Glass Moon, or as Mike Portnoy called it when we saw him in Cleveland, Under an Ass Moon, because James LaBrie, second song of the set was Under a Glass Moon. He split his pants.
Oh,
and
that's right.
He had to run off. He had to run off stage and get a new pair of pants off the tour bus. And as he was running off stage, Mike Portnoy said, "Hey James, was that Under an Ass Moon?"
That's fantastic. I forgot that. That's awesome.
Yeah, but yeah. So this is that song, like I mentioned earlier. I think this is kind of the third in the block of 3.
Sure.
Take the Time, Metropolis, and Under a Glass Moon. This song isn't anything you didn't get with Take the Time or Metropolis, but it's still great. It's like,
I don't know, man. For me, it's the closest thing to filler for me on this record.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
I don't know. It doesn't, like you said, there's kind of 2 other songs on this record that are very much like this. And this is, I think, the weakest of the 3 children.
Okay. I disagree. I still love it.
Yeah.
And to be completely honest with you, I didn't really think about the whole, there's 3 types of the same song on here.
Yeah.
Literally until today. I listened to the album like a good 3-4 times while I was working. And I kind of realized that. I'm like, yeah, these are kind of similar in a way. And I've been listening to this album for years and years and never noticed it. So I don't think it really stands out unless you're actually kind of like looking for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if I had to pick a song that would, which I don't think there's any filler on here, but I guess I could see this being the one because you already have 2 songs like it. I would agree with you there. But again, I just think this is a great song. It's got a really cool, like, kind of epic intro, the big majestic.
Yep.
That's just cool and big. And again, it's something when they play it live, the lights are down, stage is black for 10 seconds or 15, whatever, and all of a sudden you hear that come in and just the place is Under a Glass Moon. And it's been a live staple of theirs for years. I mean, this is one of the more popular ones from this record to play.
I think you hit on something for me just inadvertently there, and that, like, James is so over the top vocally on this song. I think that even when I heard it on the record, I was like, all right, that's a little bit much. So I think that's part of it. I think he just goes a little bit too into the stratosphere throughout this entire song for me.
Okay. All right. Yeah, see, I like when he does that. And I mean, it sucks in one way because it's one of those vocal deliveries that eventually the guy's not going to be able to do it.
Sure.
And it's one of the reasons I really like the new record is because he's writing for the live environment. It's very intelligent. It's the way that it's written. It's like, okay, let's make these songs easier to sing live.
Sure.
So keeps them fresh for us. So I like that. But
yeah,
that said, I mean, one of the hallmarks of this record is James and those absolutely soaring notes that he hits.
Sure.
And
no question.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, think of your favorite vocalists. Like, don't you have songs with each of the guys that can just sing unbelievably, that you're like, it gets to the point where you're like, all right, dude, I get it. You can sing, you can sing like a mofo. But you're just going for it the entire song. Like, there's just some songs where there's that occasional song where you're like, they went just a bridge too far.
Yeah. And I guess that goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier. Did James write these vocal parts, or did the guys write them and say, "Hey, new guy, sing this"? It's like,
I tend to think there was a little bit of that, and you could see them get yes. So absolutely,
Yeah. Sarcasmo Asholio says, to your point earlier, Kevin Moore is a great lyricist. OSI was an awesome project. I love Radiolog. He also worked with Fates Warning and Opeth. Very true. And then he also says, I think Les Paul's favorite album is Falling Into Infinity, but he spells it Failing Into Infinity. Sarcasmo, that's probably a subtle dig at me too, because Falling Into Infinity is my favorite record. So
I like that record too. I had in my memory that for some reason that you didn't like that record.
No, that is my favorite album.
Okay.
I absolutely love it. And we'll get into that when
I
we do our deep dive.
scrapped about that album fairly recently with somebody, and I thought it was you. So I apologize for assigning that to you. I was talking with somebody that really does not like Lines in the Sand. So in my memory, I had that assigned as being you. So apologies
No,
for that.
just always remember, you and I argue about Awake. That is our argument.
Awaken train of thought.
Oh my Lord!
Yeah.
All right, so this one should be pretty quick, but Wait for Sleep, track number 7. Very concise, like 2.5 minutes long, but
Yep.
man, so many bands have tried to do this.
Yeah.
Like, here's this little quick interlude, the salad before the steak, and it just doesn't work. It kind of feels like it rushed, and we're just gonna, puke something out to kind of like, here's a little thing we're gonna do. And as simple as this has never felt like that to me.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, something like this, you're right. Like, there's a lot of bands that attempt it, and it's the interlude. Like, Judas Priest has, like, if you look at the Jugulator album, for example, every
Yes.
single song, I know that Aiken, like, it drove him crazy that every single song on that record had like some long build up. Like, the songs couldn't just start. So, in that same way, like, you have like bands that'll do an interlude like this that, like, you'll just say, that's just the track that I'm going to skip every time that I'm listening to the record. Like, could you guys just left it off the record? But you're right. Like, it's a very concise song, and it's like, and it totally fits. Like, it fits really. Like, I really like what they did with it, and it's to your point. Like, I don't think it's something that very many bands can pull off.
Yeah. And I think it's also a very, it expands the band's sound even more.
Sure, agreed.
Because the one thing that you hadn't gotten from Labrie on the record to this point is that mellow, breathy, just beautiful, understated ballad voice that he has.
Yeah.
And on this one, it was like, hey, this guy can also do this.
Mhm.
Again, something else that I wonder. I would love to ask the question, but they bring the the keyboard line from this song
Yeah.
back into the record in the final song, "Learning to Live,"
Uh-huh.
and I've always wondered, did they hear that in "Learning to Live" and say, "Oh, I can break this out into a whole piano thing," and let's show everybody that James can sing like this? Like, was that kind of like almost like a purposeful afterthought? I've always wondered about that because
It sounds like you have your next question to ask Mike Portnoy on Cameo.
yeah,
Have you seen the guy that buys cameos and does that? I love that guy.
No, what?
There's a
I
guy
have not.
because he puts all of his videos that he's had Mike do on YouTube, and it's like, and so he takes like total like awesome nerd questions like this, and he just spends the money and has Mike answer them, and I love it because he's done enough of them now that Mike's like, oh, it's this guy, how you doing, and today he wants to know, so maybe if we're lucky, he's watching this podcast and he will put that to Mike as a Cameo question. Because I mean, being serious, like what you're posing here, I would love to know that. I don't know that, and I would love to know, when they connected those dots, because it's a really cool, subtle but important connection.
Yeah, I just hope that guy gives me credit. Don't be taking credit for my question, Cameo question guy.
This guy, I'll tell you, this guy, and I'll have to dig him up. I wish I could remember the guy's name. This guy like has done so many cameo videos, cameo video requests with Portnoy, that one of the last ones that I saw, like Mike took his name and turned it into a song where he was just singing the guy's name over and over. You could tell that Mike had been inside with the pandemic just a little bit too long, so he was like getting a little bit slap happy. So
needed to fire up those creative juices.
I feel I'm surprised that like there's nobody here in the chat that is like fired up with this guy's name. I know that somebody else besides me, I forget how I even came across this guy, but like I came across this guy and I was like, oh, he's got several of these videos, and I was like, oh wait, these are all Cameo videos, because I'm just on YouTube, and whatever it was that led me to the guy on YouTube, I was like, wow, he's got a lot of these videos from Mike, and I'm like, what are these? I was like, oh, these are Cameo videos. So that's what, like, before I even started watching the videos, like I just was thinking how much money the guy spent on these. I was like going, oh my god. So
some rich guy with money to burn, just doing some getting some nerd cred.
Yeah, yeah, it's like I would meet up with this guy in public, not knowing that he spent all these money on spent all this money on cameo videos. And I'd be like, yeah, this one time I spent like I don't know, it must have been like an hour on the phone with Portnoy, and he would just like punch me in the face, like do you know why he just punched me in the face? Well, yeah, dude, you spent an hour on the phone with Portnoy, and by comparison, this guy, spent like $800 just to get 8 minutes back from Portnoy, so.
It cost him 300 alone just to ask him about his 14-inch snare.
Yeah.
So speaking of creative juices,
Yeah.
closing the album, anybody who wants to check it out, who has not checked it out, last episode, I should say, we did our ranking of the best closing Dream Theater songs. We ranked all of them, all 15 of them.
Nice.
And my number one Dream Theater album closer was this song, Learning to Live.
Yeah.
I think that this song is absolutely incredible. And it's, I phrase it that it's kind of like the big brother of the songs on the album.
Yeah.
It's always seemed a little bit more mature in a songwriting vein to me as compared to the rest of the record, even though the rest of it's great. And I think it's almost like a greatest hits of what you heard before. It's like,
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, remember this heavy part? Cool. Well, here's the heavy. Remember that mellow part? Here's the mellow part. Remember, this proggy part? Well, here's that. Remember how James can hit this crazy high note? Well, here's the craziest high note on the record. Like, it's got something from every one of the songs before it, and I think it ties together so beautifully. And it's just it feels like an ending, doesn't it? They're known for that later in the career. They've got these songs that close albums, and it feels like this grand ending. And I think this is the song that started it all, and is still, they broke the mold when they wrote this one. This is the example of how to close a record to me.
Yeah, and it's brilliant to me in the same way that Take the Time is. Like, it's just like, if you have like kind of two, like, bosom buddies on this record, like to me, it would be Take the Time and Learning to Live. And it's just like, they're just both brilliantly lengthy songs.
Cool. Yeah. I don't know if I would link them, because I think I would. Learning to Live seems like a little more reserved to me, whereas Take the Time is a little more frenetic.
I hear that. Yeah, sure.
So I don't know. Personally, I wouldn't link them, but I could see definitely why you would.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the first time I heard this song, I wasn't paying attention to the track listing, so I didn't know what the last song was. But I vividly remember thinking, boy, this feels like, I mean, if they're going to end with anything other than this, I don't know how they're going to follow it up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. So
did you have this record on cassette or CD?
CD.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what an interesting ride this would have been, like, if you had cassette and, like, you actually had to like flip it over midway through. It's like, this is definitely one of those records that, like, you get to the end of the first side and you're like, holy shit, hold my calls, I'm gonna need to listen to the other half of this.
I know. Yeah, it's so fascinating to think about it in those terms.
Yeah.
Like I said, because the CD's all the way through, but then, and again, like, I discovered it in '95, but it was my first introduction to the band. So
why so late? I'm surprised. I didn't know that.
Well, again, like when I told the story, like,
man, I didn't like good music. I'm sorry. Continue. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, like I said, I couldn't remember the band name in '92 when I was looking for Pull Me Under.
Yeah.
And it kind of fell off the radar, and then I didn't discover it again until I was hanging out with my buddy Andy in '95,
Nice.
and he had the record. I was like, oh my God, Pull Me Under! That's that song I was looking for. So, but this was still my first full introduction to the band.
Yeah.
So,
nice.
yeah, and this song was just, I remember listening to the album and again thinking, okay, this sounds like a closer, and sure enough, it was. And then I got done with it, kind of laid back, and I was just like, what the hell did I just listen to? Like, this is just unbelievable. And you want to talk about a song that leaves you wanting more.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Oh, yeah.
and thankfully at that time they had another record that I could go grab. So I looked it up, and I was like, okay, I gotta check out this Awake album. And then later on that year or maybe it was the next year, I think it was '95. They did the Change of Seasons. So
Which
I had
that was pretty astounding. Like,
Yeah.
to get that.
Well, I mean, it was supposed to be on this record.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. I mean, have you ever thought about that? What a Change of Seasons would sound like with the Images and Words production?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
That would be. I mean, I love the production on that EP, but my God, that huge song. I mean, and then to take it one step further, you picture Learning to Live. What a great closer! And then here comes 23 minutes of A Change of Seasons. I mean,
That's what I was just looking up. I was just looking up to see if there was, and if there was, like, it's not represented on Wikipedia, but I was looking to see if there was the Japanese edition of the record that like added like a bonus track like after Learning to Live, because I was just thinking how much fun it would be to get that version of the album. And the next time we're together, play it, and you're expecting for it to end with Learning to Live, and all of a sudden this other song comes on. You're like, wait, what? What's happening here? So
this isn't the real thing. I know my Dream Theater. Damn you! This I know.
yeah, yeah. I can still do that. I can just make a Spotify playlist and add an extra 5 songs. Like, dude, your record didn't have these, you know?
Sarcasmo Asholio. You know I love you guys. Gentle ribbing, LOL. For years I thought I was their only fan. No, Sarcasmo Asholio, that's the thing about our show. We can both take a beating, especially me.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
you feel free to rib us all you want, man. It's not fun without you guys jumping in. And if you're gonna bust our balls, that's even better.
It's really
So-
special. Like, people here are witnessing something special tonight, because I've hardly beat on you at all throughout this entire night. I've been very focused and professional by my
You're-
standards.
You were in professional mode because you had an interview to do.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah. It's hard for you to come down off of that mountaintop. So so images and words. Final thoughts from you.
Final thoughts from me. You know, again, like, I think that this is kind of where they peak as a band. There are records that I do like a lot after this. You know, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence being one of them. Falling into Infinity probably being another one. I would say of those two, I would think that 6 Degrees probably has the no, you know, let me think. So, Scenes from Memory, I would say that
Yep.
top to bottom, from a track listing standpoint and quality of songs, that's probably the album that comes closest to the quality of this record. Like, I think that they, you know, obviously there was, you know, Scenes from Memory was a concept record, so it's like they would have been putting a lot of thought into every inch of that. So I think that that's kind of what links those two records, is that in that same way, this is an album that you can tell that they really, really thought out every inch of this record. And I think Scenes from a Memory was the next time that I really heard that from the band, that, you know, that it just felt like they had put that same amount of effort into a set of songs.
Sure.
So, and you know, there are some records. I mean, I almost like, I didn't mind the production on this record, but I feel like the production on this record was basically flawed from day one. So it's like there are some records that you like listen to years later, and it's like, and they don't hold up for certain reasons, you know, and sometimes that can be the production. And this, you know, anything that was made between like 1990 and, you know, 92, I mean, obviously just the 80s in general, but specifically like 1990, when a lot of bands started to break away from the sound of records, how records sounded in the 80s, there were then other bands that made records that took advantage of all the technology at the time, and it was technology that didn't hold up well, and those records sound very plastic as a result. So when you consider that from the get-go, the production, it was what it was with this record, it does not ruin this record. It didn't ruin the record for me then. And it's like, and I still go back to this record and I enjoy this record just as much as I did then. Like, there's just a lot of great songs on this record. And particularly like if I'm driving on a road trip, like it's still a journey that I really enjoy taking, listening to this album.
Yep. I could not agree more. I listened to it, like I say, 3-4 times today, and it did not get old. And
Now, when you
it's-
edit this for the podcast, if you could have this be my answer, you're going to ask me, you know, Images and Words, overall your thoughts, and I'm just going to say it's a great album, and I'm just going to leave you cold. So,
don't worry, I'm going to cut all of your answers short on this. It's going
Yeah.
to basically be like, you know, an hour and a half of me and about 5 minutes of you. Don't worry.
perfect.
So
All right,
all
it's going to be a
of
good
Monty's
podcast then.
all of Monty's answers are just going to sound like he's just riffing on his own for quite a while.
Nice.
So-
Yeah.
But, yeah,
That's a really good question, John.
the terrible voiceover.
Yeah. The audio doesn't match his lips, you know?
Yeah. Like when you're listening to audiobooks, you could tell they had to go overdub something, and then the guy sounds like this for a second, and then he's back to doing this. Like
That part where he's like, "You fucking asshole," it just says John. But the lips move for an extra 2 seconds.
Right. Anytime you take a dig at me, I just insert a long compliment. Like,
Yeah.
So
The cricket
yeah.
sound effects.
So yeah, I think, this record for me, it never ever gets old. I never skip anything on it. It's like I say, it was my gateway, and I know a lot of fans have that experience with it, so mine is not unique. But it did form again, like a lot of people, a lifetime love of the band.
Yeah.
And I always come back to it, and I have those fond memories. Like, first of all, it's an incredible record.
Yeah.
But I have the nostalgia factor with it, and there's that emotional connection to it, and I still can picture exactly what my buddy's dorm room looks like when I think of listening to this album. I mean, it's crazy how vivid the memories are. And I think that's not only a testament to the emotional connection, but also the quality of the songs. As you said,
Sure,
this is just such an incredibly written album. And
yeah.
I get it, they had a year and a half to write it. So
Yeah.
But the fascinating thing to me is, Dream Theater's career is very different from a lot of bands in one major respect, and that is, and you work with bands all the time. You've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of famous people.
Sure,
And
including yourself. But continue.
I said famous, not infamous. But you've heard this a million times. You've got your whole life to make your first record, and then like 2 weeks to make your second.
Which explains Awake. But anyway.
You might make that argument because Dream Theater got to make 2 first albums, I think.
Yeah.
Because they had all this time to make, When Dream and Day Unite, and then they were sitting on their ass for a year and a half, 2 years without a singer. So the music for their second record was not rushed. It was absolutely gone over with a fine-tooth comb for a long time. And, a song like Pull Me Under, sure, right song, right time, and it's a phenomenal song. It's got a giant hook for radio.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the record is so unbelievably strong that, Pull Me Under drew people in. And then, as I said earlier, Awake separates the wheat from the chaff, as I use that term, oil and water, whatever.
Sure.
But the songwriting is what kept people there. The people that stayed with them on Awake knew what the band was capable of because of how incredibly strong the songs were on Images and Words. And it's their most important record. It's their most high quality record. And I don't say that in the typical cliche way of, oh, that's just a great record. But it really is important because had it just been Pull Me Under and a bunch of other stuff, they wouldn't have gone anywhere because people wouldn't have cared. But people cared enough to stick with them for a while, and they really got to dig their claws in, with Awake and Falling Into Infinity, and then thankfully there are enough people left for Scenes from a Memory, and then it's the rest is history. So.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. Like for what I said about Awake, like what I appreciate about Awake is, one, I would never say it's a garbage record, even though I think I've said that to you in jest and just giving you crap. Like,
sure,
they went a different direction, and it was not my kind of thing. But I think that's one thing that like Dream Theater fans have always appreciated about this band is they're never afraid to push the boat out further and further from the dock. And they did that with Awake. They did that with Falling Into Infinity. And I think that was what was exciting to me and is exciting to me about being a Dream Theater fan is that they were one of those bands that, I didn't know that I was going to get the same kind of record from the band every time. That wasn't going to happen. Like you never knew exactly what you were going to get record wise from Dream Theater until you had it in your hands and you were listening to it. And to this day with the latest record, like, when I push play on a new Dream Theater record, like, it's anybody's guess what I'm going to get. Like they still have that element of surprise. And I really appreciate that about them as a band.
Yeah, I could not agree more. It's, they're one of those bands, and it's a homer comment from me, but
sure,
I know that even a record that I may not care for, like some of the others that I really like, I still really enjoy it. It's almost like the old saying about pizza, like even bad pizza is good. And Dream Theater for me is just one of those bands, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. With what you said, in that you're getting something different every
Yeah,
time, but it's always going to have those elements that you love. You're not going to get Queensryche going from Empire to Here in the Now Frontier.
sure.
You're not going to get Metallica going from And Justice for All to Load. You're gonna get a Dream Theater record. You're just like, how crazy is the musicianship, and how big are the hooks going to be, and what different kind of noodling are they going to have, and
And I say this
so
constructively. I don't know, and I don't think you're a big fan of this record either. I don't know if this to be true, but I don't know exactly what they were doing with The Astonishing, but I can honestly tell you that I don't think I've listened to that entire record all the way through to be able to analyze what they were doing with The Astonishing. So it's like, while I did not dig that record at all, I didn't give it, I can't say that I listened through the whole thing and gave it the chance in the same way that our friend Jim Bartek with Judas Priest and Nostradamus. Like, there's a
Nostradamus,
lot of
yeah.
people that tapped out on Nostradamus, and that was me with The Astonishing and Dream Theater. I tapped out, like, I don't even know if I made it through the first disc, so that's the one and only time. Like, I can tell you that Awake, like, I've listened to Awake numerous times. Not my thing, but I respect what they were doing there. Astonishing is kind of the one spot in their catalog that, like, I'm just not sure what they were doing. And as we're talking through this, like, as we've gone through, as you always do on this show, as we've really gone deep into Dream Theater land, like, I'm going, you know what, I want to pull that record back out and give it, another listen to kind of, because I've had that, man, where it's like I'll have a record that I just spend a long period of years hating, and then I put it on. It's like, okay, I get it now. There's
Yeah.
I think that record came out, like, it's been this way for a long time, where we constantly just have so much music being thrown at us that, like, it's very easy that if a record comes out that you don't dig it or you don't dig part of it, it's easy to, like, bypass that and move on to the other 12 things that fell on your radar that same day. And so that's a record that I feel like I need to go back and really kind of, that would be a good road trip record when I have nothing else going on, to, like, just give it the fair shake and play through the entire thing. And maybe I'm still not going to get it, but that's the one spot in their catalog that I'm not incredibly well versed on, that I would love to know more about where their head was at when they went down that road, because they went the whole way, like, they, all the way to, like, playing the entire record live, which is a little bit more of a commitment for an audience than the audience sitting through scenes from a memory, so.
Yep. Well, I mean, it's funny you mentioned that, because now we have two Dream Theater records that we can argue about, because I'll save a lot of my stuff for when Brian and I do our deep dive into it. I absolutely love The Astonishing, and I think the reason is that I love the concept of it.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that, in the year, was it 2016, 2017, when attention spans are short.
sure.
Everyone's got their nose buried in their phone. People, I mean, the lyric just says it perfectly. And, the first song with lyrics, people just don't have the time for music anymore.
Yeah,
People don't sit back and just listen to full records like we used to when we were kids. And just the sheer balls it took to put together, even conceive of a project of that nature, the way that, the music industry is these days, the way that music fans are these days. It was such a leap, and I loved it. And I think the reason I love it so much is not only that, but also because I look at it as a complete outlier in their catalog. I
sure.
I
Yeah.
I don't look at it as an album. I
Hmm.
look at it as listening to a movie.
Okay.
So
All right.
it's a very different experience, because I'm instead of going, okay, I'm listening to the new Dream Theater record, like, I'm like, no, I'm listening to a story set to music. Because I knew it was going to be really long. I knew it was really big, really involved, and for that reason, I think I was already expecting something way out of my Dream Theater comfort zone, and so I love it for that reason. And let's face it, it's the most Dream Theater thing that they could possibly do.
Super Balls, though, like, also just playing that entire record live, like, not even Iron
Yep.
Maiden at this point is playing their, like, double records live in their entirety. They're not doing it. So it's just like,
Yep.
I really respect that Dream Theater went out and took that path, because they also have to, and I don't think it's a hard sell to promoters, because promoters know that, like, if it says Dream Theater on the tickets, X number of people will show up. But there are certain other bands that might have had to convince a promoter that like we're going to do this and this is going to work and here's why. And I think that the planets are aligned for Dream Theater because like they almost are like an Iron Maiden, where literally Iron Maiden can go out and do anything, and the promoters are like, "Cool, it's Iron Maiden." So I think it's the same way with Dream Theater.
Yep.
Not too many bands have that luxury.
I could not agree more, man. And I think Images and Words, to bring it all back home, I think Images and Words is the anchor to all that. It's where it started, and I think that's where people come back to. It's like their comfort food. If Dream Theater is a buffet, Images and Words is the comfort food that you reach for. It's the macaroni and cheese. It's the
Ooh, macaroni and cheese.
Yeah. So, well, man, that was an absolute blast. I cannot thank you, number one, enough for coming on in the first place, but number two, on such short notice, helping us out and bailing my buddy Brian out as he's dealing with some family stuff, unfortunately. But I really appreciate you jumping in, man.
This was a huge pleasure, man. Always a pleasure. Glad we got to do it again.
For sure. So yeah, like I said, guys, Brian is off dealing with some family stuff. So again, best wishes and much love to him. He himself is fine, but he's off helping family in St. Louis. He got called away this afternoon, so that's why he is not here. But he is hoping to be back next week. And next week, December 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So it is 1 week until our next show. We are doing our big fan hangout. So any of you guys that want to jump on camera and help host the show, feel free. Just send us an email to talkingintoinfinity@gmail.com. We're going to talk about anything you guys want. If you guys have questions for us, if you guys have your own Dream Theater stories for us, we want to hear those. It's basically, kind of a Christmas thing. All of you guys, this is our 25th episode already. And Brian and I say it all the time. You guys actually make the show go, and we appreciate all you so very much for tuning in every week and downloading the show and checking it out on YouTube. So we kind of want to just hang out with you guys and have some drinks and celebrate the holidays with you. So next Thursday, December 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, all the usual outlets: YouTube, Facebook, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the cmsnetwork.com. And Matt, before we go, what do you have coming? Because right before you got on with me, you were talking to Mr. Bruce Kulick, formerly of KISS, now of what, Grand Funk Railroad, correct?
Correct. Yeah, he's been with Grand Funk, like I think for the last 20 years at least. Probably heading towards close to 25. But he's actually doing a show like December 30th in Las Vegas, where he and his band are like doing a bunch of like 80s and 90s KISS. They've been doing that. They've been doing that on the KISS cruises the last couple years. And anybody, I mean, dude, you're gonna know. I mean, Todd Dammit Kearns is just a monster player, monster vocalist, and that's his singer in the whole thing. So it's just oh yeah. So it's like their stuff is on YouTube. So it's just like anybody that's a KISS fan, check that out. Like, I mean, he's just, and they're talking about finally maybe taking it out and doing some shows in the US next year, which is really cool.
I would definitely go see that.
So yeah, like things have kind of slowed down since it's the holidays as far as talking to people, but I talked to him. I'm talking to Mr. Steve Vai tomorrow. And then I spent the entire all of 2021 doing a podcast about albums from 1991 called 1991, the year that AOR ate itself. And so we look back at an album a month for the entire year, everything from Guns N' Roses' Use Your Illusion to Van Halen for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, to some stuff that's a little bit, more off the path, like Backlash from Bad English, which is a favorite of mine. So guy that I was doing that with, a buddy of mine, that we've been friends for a little bit more than 20 years, I would say, guy named Jeff Giles. He and I are going to start a new podcast together in January called The Record Player, where it's like we're going to kind of continue to talk about albums like that, but we just want to start doing something that can open us up to talk about any album, any genre, any year. And folks that want to find that can find me on Twitter at RecordPlayerPod, RecordPlayerPodcast.com. And I'm on Twitter myself at MWardlaw. So that's about all the cheap plugs I got for the moment, man.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to bust your balls one time and then we're going to get out of here.
Yeah.
I cannot believe I invite you on my show and you go and do an entire show about For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge and one of my all-time favorite records, and you do not invite me to guest on your show.
So my buddy Jeff and I, we both, he wrote for
Ugh.
Ultimate Classic Rock in the past, and I, of course, am still at Ultimate Classic Rock. And so the editor of Ultimate Classic Rock, a guy named Matthew Wilkening, is the biggest Van Halen fan this side of you and I.
Right.
So he's a huge Van Halen fan, and he's a huge Kiss fan. So as Jeff was plotting out the entire year of episodes, he was like, all right, he's like, we got to see if Matthew will join us for the Van Halen one. So you got blocked by another Matt. So I apologize. It's like, it's not enough that you're getting blocked by me through life. Like two Matts for the price of one.
Well, I want to get on an episode with that guy, and let's see who can out Van Halen the other.
All right.
Nice. So, anyways, man, thank you very much again.
Likewise,
I really
man.
appreciate it, brother. And all you guys, we will see you next Thursday. Again, we are on next week, not in 2 weeks. So we are on next Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our big fan hangout. You guys are awesome. Many, many thanks to Mr. Monty Colvin of the Galactic Cowboys for coming on to open the show and talk about the tour in '93 that they did with Dream Theater for the Images and Words cycle. Don't forget MontyColvinArt.com and his podcasts, Monty's Rockcast and Art That Rocks. You guys are kick-ass, and we will see you next week.